So we're not just in a seller's market, we're in an extreme seller's market. Inventory has gone way down in the real estate market, and the number of home buyers has just skyrocketed ever since the interest rates have dropped so low. And it's becoming harder and harder for home buyers to actually get their offers accepted. And what I tell my clients is when we submit an offer, you have to assume that you're going up against at least 3 or 4 other offers. Sometimes it's a lot more than that. I've seen 11 offers on a property within just 1 week. But there are some techniques that you can use with your offer to make it much stronger, make it irresistible to the sellers. And those techniques are not always just offering them more money. There's a lot of other factors that you can help out the sellers to get them to actually want to accept your offer. And so today I want to run through 10 techniques that I'm using with my own clients to actually get our offers accepted in this extreme seller's market. So the first technique is to look for sale by owner. So the truth is that for sale by owner listings always get far less exposure than listings listed with real estate agents. And this makes them far less competitive than standard homes listed with real estate agents. So when a real estate agent puts up a listing, we put it up in our state's multiple listing service. And this makes it available to all buyers out there who are working with real estate agents, and it automatically syndicates that listings to all the public websites. So, Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, all the individual real estate agents' websites. So it gets massive exposure automatically. But for sale by owners, they have to manually enter in that information on each individual website. The truth is, a lot of for sale by owners are pretty lazy about that, and they may only actually put their listing up on 1 or 2 of these public websites. And obviously the most popular one is Zillow, right? And there's a lot of for sale by owners that's all they do. So they put their listing up on Zillow, they take a handful of pictures of their listing with their cell phones, and that's about it for marketing. So those listings are simply not getting as much exposure as the standard listings that are listed with real estate agents. So when you submit your offer, it's a good chance that you may actually be the only offer that those for sale by owners are getting. And I actually have a client under contract right now, and this is exactly what we did. And actually, I give credit to him. He was searching on Zillow. He found a for sale by owner that just hit the market. We got over there and I showed him the property the very next day, and the day after that, we submitted our offer. He had a lot of showings, but we were the only offer that he got. An interesting thing is that owner, he was manually showing the property to each individual showing. So when you're listed with a real estate agent, the buyer's agent can get access to the property and they can show on your behalf. But a lot of for sale by owners, they are manually showing each and every single buyer that property. So it becomes very frustrating for sale by owners, and they oftentimes will just kind of throw their hands up and just go with the first solid offer that they get. So this is a great technique that I really encourage you to use. You can go on Zillow and you can look for sale by owners on there. I think you can even set up some kind of email alert. You can also go to forsalebyowner.com. You can also look on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. A lot of for sale by owners list their homes there as well. Now, a few warnings about for sale by owners. Since they don't have an agent working with them, oftentimes that process is just more stressful than a typical transaction. Usually they don't know what they're doing. They sell a home once every 10 years or maybe never before. So they're not gonna have all their paperwork in order. It's gonna take a lot longer to get paperwork back from them. So it's typically not as smooth of a process as working with a home listed by a real estate agent. But in this market right now, I do encourage you to explore this. Another thing is that, real estate agents, we get paid by commission that is offered by the seller. And sometimes for sale by owners don't really understand that, and they don't offer the buyer's agent any commission, or they offer them far less than we typically get. So just keep that in mind, that with a for sale by owner, you may have to pay your buyer agent's commission, or maybe part of that. So the next technique is for you to write a short personal letter to the sellers that you submit with your offer. And I cannot tell you how effective of a technique this is. I personally use this with every single client that I work with. And I've actually been using this technique for over a year now before we even got into this extreme seller's market, because it is just that effective. And so typically I have them just write one page, maybe like 2 or 3 paragraphs, just kind of talking about themselves and what their plans are with that house. And I usually have them include a picture of their family. And so let me give you an example. So when I purchased this home, so we have a son who's got special needs. He's born with intellectual disabilities. And so we recently moved from our house and we sold it and moved to this area specifically to get our son in a school that's really for kids with special needs. And so when we put an offer on this property, I just kind of explained that in the letter, saying, hey, we love your house, we envision raising your family here, and this house is going to allow us to get our child who has special needs into Central Special, which is a school that is in the school zone that this property is in. And, you know, it's not, you know, deceptive or anything like that. I'm just being honest of what our motivation is and why we really love this house and why we're looking in this area. And I remember the seller actually told me, like, wow, what a great letter when we actually met them. And most sellers just want to know that their home's going to a good family. And I've absolutely 100% seen sellers accept a lower offer because they somehow make a connection with the buyer. You know, typically when you submit an offer, you never have any direct communication with the seller. It's very formal. And this is really the only way for you to kind of build that emotional connection with them. Let me give you another example. So when we sold our last home in order to move here, you know, we put it up on the market. We got multiple offers on it. Now, I was in the Air Force for 11 years. If I would have been in a situation where I had 2 offers and one of them was $5,000 below, but they wrote me a personal letter saying, hey, we're, you know, a young military family. We want to raise our family in this house. We're stationed at the same base that I was at, Andrews Air Force Base, and it was only $5,000 difference. Like, yeah, I probably would have gone with that one just because I want to help out, you know, military families like that, and I kind of have that personal connection. So I cannot tell you how effective of a technique this is. And even if you weren't military, you don't have any special situations, really just write anything, you know. Just talk about what your plans are to do with the house. And if you can talk about family, you know, raising a family there, anything like that, or how this is your first time home buyer and this is going to help kind of launch you financially, something along those lines. This is just an incredibly powerful technique. I have all my buyers do this every time we submit an offer. Just write a short 1-page, 1, 2, 3 paragraph letter directly to the sellers explaining to them why you want to purchase their home. So next tip is to buy the home as is. So typically when you get a home under contract, you have a set amount of days, maybe 10 days, to do your home inspections, and then you have another round of negotiations. And every single house that I sell, there's always some kind of repairs that the buyers negotiate to have the sellers do, and then the sellers have to go get contractors and get those repairs done, and then we do the final walkthrough and the buyers inspect those repairs. And it's a stressful time. This is my least favorite part of the transaction, is negotiating repairs for the after the home inspection. And typically I see anywhere between like $500 to $2,000 worth of repairs that get negotiated during this time on just about every property. Sometimes it's a lot more, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 worth of repairs. So if you can help the sellers just avoid that stress altogether and just say that we'll buy this home as is, that can significantly help your offer get accepted. And what we do here in Maryland is we have as is with the right to inspections and the right to terminate. So you can still do your home inspections, and you can, if you find anything extremely wrong, wood rot, termites, anything like that, you can back out of the contract, get all your money back and everything as well. So as is with the right to inspections and the right to terminate is what we usually do. And once again, representing sellers, I have seen sellers take, I recently, just a couple months ago, a seller took an offer $10,000 lower than another offer because it was as is, and he was just, his personality, he was so stressed out already, he just wanted to hit that easy button. You know, money is not always the motivating factor for sellers. It isn't. selling a home and, buying another home, which is what he was doing, is a very stressful time. And sometimes people just want to hit that easy button. They don't want to deal with that headache. And so he accepted an offer $10,000 below the other offer just because this one was as is, and it just made it much, much simpler for him. So the next technique is to offer a free rent back to the seller. So when you sell a home, typically on closing day, you need to be completely moved out of that property. The house needs to be vacant and broom swept. And it can be very tricky for sellers sometimes to time that closing date up with buying their new home. A lot of people need to sell their house first, and then they can take those proceeds to buy their next home. And it's not uncommon for sellers to be essentially homeless for a few days or a week or a month or so between the sale of their home and the purchase of their next home. And it can be very stressful for a lot of people. Some people have to go live with families or go live in a hotel or something, have all their belongings in a storage unit or moving trucks or something. So if you could offer them maybe a week's free rent, essentially they're going to turn into your tenants and rent the property from you. And if you can offer them a week free rent or 2 weeks or even a month's free rent, so that they don't have that problem, they can take their time moving out after they actually sold the home and close on the transaction, that can be incredibly valuable to a lot of sellers. And you're not really losing out on any money by doing this. So your first mortgage payment is typically not due for 30 to 60 days after you close on that property. So why that big range? Well, your mortgage payment's not due on the month that you close in, and it's not due the entire full month after that. The month after that is when your first mortgage payment is due. So you could literally rent that house back to them for free for a month, and you still don't have a mortgage payment yet for another few weeks down the road. So you're not really losing out on anything, and you're gonna help the sellers just alleviate a lot of stress. Now, I would recommend that you actually talk to the listing agent first and see if this would be something of value for those sellers. Because if the house is already vacant, for example, that may not be as valuable. But if they're in that home and living in that home and they're trying to purchase another home at the same time, that can be extremely valuable for you to offer them a free rent back with your offer. So the next technique is pretty straightforward, but that's simply offer them above list price. And what I tell my clients is, in this market, don't even look at the list price. Don't even factor that in. Look at the house and determine for yourself and crunch the numbers of what your monthly mortgage payment would be. Determine for yourself what that house is worth to you. And I tell them to crunch the monthly mortgage payment because even though they are paying more for that house right now than they would have 12 months ago, most likely their monthly mortgage payment is still going to be less than it would have been 12 months ago. For most buyers that I work with, that monthly mortgage payment is really that limiting factor, right? They figured out how much they can afford every month first, and that determines what the price range is that they're looking at. Now, with a lot of buyers, though, the tricky thing is that you do have an appraisal that you're probably going to have to pass in order to have the loan go through. So you are kind of capped at how high you can offer them above list price for that property. So specifically with like a VA and FHA loan, they have an appraisal that they're going to determine the home is worth what you're paying for it. They don't want you to get underwater on that property and spend way more than it's actually worth. And so that's kind of the limiting factor of how much you can offer above them. Now I will say, so last year I did 30 transactions. I only had one home that failed the appraisal. It's not that often. This year, once again, so far this year, 2020, I've only had one home fail the appraisal. Both times they were very, very unique properties. And that can be a big factor as well. If it's a very standard cookie cutter property, it's much easier to predict what the appraisal will come in at. But I think appraisers understand now that home values are going up, and a lot of times the appraisers will try to work with you as well. But if you can offer above list price and you really want that property, I would go ahead and do that. So the next trick is to add an escalation clause to your offer. So what an escalation clause is, it's just a form that you fill out, and essentially it would say, I will offer you $400,000, but if you get an offer above mine, I will increase my offer in increments of $1,000 up to $410,000. So with the escalation clause, if you offer them $400,000, they get an offer for $405,000, you're automatically saying, hey, I will beat that offer by $1,000. And so you'd end up going in at $406,000 with that escalation clause. And this is becoming more and more common that we're seeing this today. Now, truthfully, the tricky part is that they can't legally give us the other offer for us to really confirm that. I mean, they sometimes can give us the first page of the other offer, which has the list price or the offer price on that, but we can't see any of those other terms. We can't see if they're asking for closing cost assistance or how long the offers, the date is until the closing. So you have to kind of put some faith in the listing agent. But we are seeing more and more of these escalation clauses with our offers these days. So next technique is to close on the property as soon as possible. Typically, sellers want to sell that home and be done with it as soon as they possibly can. Now, kind of the most common date that we see is 30 days from offer acceptance. And sometimes I have buyers who say, well, can we make that 40, 45, 50 days? You know, maybe they're trying to time it up with their move or something, and that will weaken your offer. Most sellers want to close as soon as possible. Now, the big limiting factor to how soon you can close is your lender. Honestly, that's going to be the biggest factor. And there are some steps that you can take with your lender ahead of time to give them all the documents that they need so that they could actually close sooner, 25 days, 20 days. And if you can talk to your lender and talk to them about that, give them everything that they need so that you can submit an offer saying, hey, we'll close in 20 days, that can be incredibly effective and to make your offer much, much stronger for the seller. So the next technique is to waive the appraisal. Now, you're not technically waiving the appraisal because for most loans you have to pass that appraisal. But let's say what you're really doing here is saying that if we fail the appraisal, I will bring the funds in order to make up the difference. So let's say you had a house, you have it under contract for $400,000, and then the appraisal comes in, it only comes in at $390,000. Typically what we have there, that loan can't go through as is, right? And typically what we have to do is have another round of negotiations. We try to get the sellers to come down to $390,000 to the appraised value if we can. If they say no, then the other option is that the buyer can bring that $10,000 difference above the appraisal, because the bank is only going to lend you money up to the appraised value. But if you wanted to bring an additional $10,000 to the table, you could certainly do that. So by waiving the appraisal, you're still getting the appraisal done, but you're just saying that if the appraisal comes in low, you will bring more money to the table, closing table, and compensate them and pay that difference. And this is just one less thing that the sellers need to stress about. And like I said, it's not that often that homes fail appraisals. I only had 1 out of 30 transactions last year. Even this year I've only had 1. But it's just going to help take the pressure off the sellers and kind of alleviate some of that stress. And they're going to make your offer seem much more reliable, that it is actually going to go through. So next up, we have not asking for closing cost assistance from the sellers. So typically in a transaction, the buyer is responsible for a bunch of taxes and fees at the time of settlement. These usually add up to 3 to 4% of the home's value. So on a $300,000 house, that'd be about $9,000, $10,000 that the buyer needs to bring to the closing table. And it doesn't go towards some mortgage or anything. This goes straight to taxes and fees and everything. And it's very, very, very common, like literally like 90, 95% of my transactions have this, for the buyer to request the seller to contribute to their closing costs. And typically what we do is, let's say the offer is $300,000. You may say, we'll give you $310,000, but we want $10,000 back to go towards our closing costs. And essentially a loophole to get your closing costs wrapped into your mortgage, because your mortgage payment will be higher at that $310,000 price range. But it does kind of muddy the waters a little bit, and it kind of complicates things, and it increases the chances that you may fail the appraisal. So let's say they're trying to get $300,000, you offer them $310,000, but you ask for $10,000 back. You're essentially offering them list price. If you wanted to offer them $10,000 above list price, you really need to offer them $320,000. And now it's getting much closer to possibly failing the appraisal. And a lot of sellers just kind of lose that confidence in that. And I've seen sellers not accept offers that are very high because they don't think that it's going to pass the appraisal. And so if you can bring the money to pay your closing costs, is going to just make it a much cleaner offer, and it'll make it much more likely that your home will pass the appraisal. You don't have to worry about that. So that can definitely help a seller feel much more confident accepting your offer. So next trick is to submit your offer as soon as you possibly can. If you can, try to be the very first offer in on that property. So as soon as that house hits the market, try to get a showing on that day or the day after on the property, and try to get your offer in as quickly as possible. So your real estate agent is gonna send you, 30 to 40 pages of legal documents for your offer. Maybe you can review those ahead of time, and that way you don't have to spend the time reviewing them when you wanna actually submit your offer. Another thing that you can do is a lot of listings, they have coming soon status, where you can't actually physically see the property, but you can at least look at the pictures, maybe videos if they have it, and you can see that before they actually hit the market. So you kind of see a house, you love it, get prepared to submit that offer, maybe even get the paperwork ready to go. If you physically can't see the property the day it hits the market or the day after, have your real estate agent go and do a video tour of the property, maybe just submit the offer based on that video tour, and then you can actually see the property during the home inspection and you can back out during that time. But being the very first offer in, for the seller, it kind of like that starts the timer. They don't want to lose any offers. They don't want somebody to walk away from their offer. So in their mind, they're like, well, we got this offer. We really got to give this person a response as soon as we can. And that's a very effective technique. And I encourage all my buyers to get into that property and submit their offers as soon as we possibly can. So all these techniques, they weren't really that common 12 months ago, but right now they're slowly becoming the standard. We're seeing all of these techniques more and more. And 12 months from now, they are going to be the standard. Every single offer is going to have most of these techniques that I outlined today. But right now we're kind of in that gray area where a lot of real estate agents haven't caught on to many of these techniques. A lot of buyers haven't accepted that the market's shifted from a seller's market to an extreme seller's market. So by using all these techniques, or just a handful of them, right now you can still make your offer stand out. And like I said before, money is not always the biggest factor for a lot of sellers. A lot of them, they've built tremendous amount of equity in just the last 12 months. So a lot of people, they just want to hit that easy button. They want the least amount of stress possible. And they also want to know that their home is going to a good family. So making your offer as clean and stress-free as possible, and writing that personal letter. That personal letter is huge. That is incredibly, incredibly influential in getting your offer accepted. And with those techniques, I am absolutely getting my clients' offers accepted, not every time, but much more often than they would otherwise. So I hope you guys found this helpful. If you guys want to see more home buying tips, check out this video I did right over here. Don't forget to subscribe for more real estate and financial advice. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you over in the next video.